Valentin, and today I'm going to be showing you how to layer with Derwent Inktense Ink Pencils. So what I have here on my easel right now is a dragon head that I have drawn, or a dragon eye, and I've lightly sketched this in on illustration board. I'm going to be painting or coloring this in with Derwent Inktense Ink Pencils. Now, as you can see, here is the sketch, and I've already started using the Payne's Gray, which happens to be one of my favorite grays to use to apply the shadows. Now, before I continue with this, let me just run past a couple of the supplies I have already set up. Before you start painting, make sure you have clean water, your brushes, paper towels, a rag, if that works better for you. Of course, your Derwent Inktense pencils. And maybe if you want to have a palette to mix some of the colors, that's up to you. Make sure when you're painting with these, since they are activated or, by water and become permanent, make sure you're kind of comfortable. Get in your artist smock or in your, your special t-shirt or shirt that you're wearing. In case you get a paint splotch on you, this is going to be permanent. We don't want to ruin any of our good clothes. As you can see, like I said, I've already started laying in some of the shadows. It may look like nothing right now, but we haven't activated it with water, and that's when the colors become very rich and start to pop. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. And I'm not laying in the shadows on everywhere on these scales, just where I know the shadows are going to hit. I've left some areas here around the eye that I want as white as possibly can be right now, so that once we get our shadows in and we start adding the layers of color or each layer of glaze on top of it, which I use the word glaze because these inks have that transparent glaze effect, and that's what you're going to be building upon. And sometimes it's best to start dark to light, at least for me in this instance. Now you can go ahead and, you have to find out what works for you. I can't say, well, this is the only way to do it, because this isn't the only way to create with. This is what works for me. And whether you're a newbie to Derwent Inktense, or you've played with these for, a while, you have to find out, as with any medium, what works best for you and what works best for the piece that you have at hand. And as you can see, we're slowly building this up. I would not recommend at all, and like I said, this is just a recommendation, starting with the black to get that ultra, super, super dark color in there. You can always darken, but it's always hard to lighten. And with these, being permanent, you can use the white Inktense pencil to lighten, but sometimes it's just best to slowly, gradually build up, and don't jump on in and say, well, I know these are going to be dark, so let's go ahead and rush on in and make them all dark. Okay. Now you can see it may appear that I'm just scribbling these in right now. In essence, that's kind of what I'm doing. But once you have them activated with water, this is all going to change, and you'll see that in a minute. And of course, since these scales are laying one on top of one another, close to the bottom, it's going to be darker. And that's why we're I'm going to go ahead and speed the video up here for a little bit as I shade it in, and then when I'm done just getting the basics and the shadows in, I'll come back and show you how to start layering. Okay, so now we're back to the real-time video. I'm going to go ahead and start adding a little bit of water to activate the inks. And like I said, this is not going to come out super dark, but this is going to give me a nice base as to where my dark areas are going to be. Remember, once you've activated it, and once it dries, you can either let it air dry or you can go ahead and zap it with a blow dryer. If you want to go ahead and speed this along, the inks will become permanent. Now I'm kind of taking my time here around the eye. And I'm not applying too much water to the piece at this time. I'm going to leave this area here a little white. That's going to make a nice highlight. I'm going to go ahead and basically what I've just done is I'm starting to add the under tones here to my work of art. Okay, so we're going to come back and add darker colors and lighter colors to it to make glazes, since these are transparent. But as you gradually build each layer upon layer, you'll start to be able to mix your colors and create some really nice effects with the Inktense pencils. You've heard me say this before. These are not, by all means, colored pencils, and a lot of people compare them to that. These are ink pencils. And there's really nothing on the market right now that compares to these. And that's a great thing. Now, like I said, as you can see, once they dry, and they've already started to dry, the color is there. It's permanent. It's not going to reactivate once you lay in lighter colors. So I'm just taking my time. Slowly building those shadows. Something like this, at least for me, I find that leaving various areas, where the highlights and stuff are going to be, the white, to allow it to, when you start building the layers, it'll allow you to have really, really bright highlights. And the snoring you hear in the background is one of my Shih Tzus. And as we go through my videos, I'm sure you'll hear more and more of my dogs either barking or snoring in the background. That happens to be Bella. She's 12 years old. Okay, as you can see, I'm working in around each of the scales of my dragon so that these scales and like the eyeball and where I've left the white around his eye are really going to pop once we start adding the color. And I have a very, I almost want to say kind of a extremely non-damp brush. Is that a word? Barely damp. There we go. Another word would get to me. Since these are basically, some people, I would put them more as to a permanent watercolor. A lot of people use these, have a very loose style to them. That works for some. That works for some in their whatever piece they're creating. This is kind of more tailored so far for my piece. So as you can see, I'm taking my time, getting those nice shadows laid in. Go back up here. And you can see, look at that, where I've applied a little more of the ink. See how dark that is? Just really beautiful. For those of you who haven't ventured into using these, I highly recommend them. And for those of you that have them, I really hope that you are enjoying them as much as I am. They are a godsend to the art community. It's always nice, at least for me as an artist, to have something new, a new medium out there to play with. And these definitely fit the mark. That's coming along really nice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of speed painting here. And when I'm ready to lay in my next color, I'll be back in real time with you. Now that I've laid in my Payne's Gray undertone, I'm going to go ahead, before I dive in and start darkening up the areas I want really, really super dark, I'm going to start in laying some color in. I have my cadmium yellow, which is 210, and I'm just going to go ahead and lay in some of the color. And remember, it doesn't have to be super, dark, really hard pressure here. Light goes a long way with these. And that's kind of nice because it'll make your pencils and that last a lot longer, which is really a cool thing. I found in using these, I have rarely had to sharpen them, which is a really super nice feature because, with colored pencils, you sit there and you sharpen, or use a razor blade and, make your tip into a point, and you're just chiseling away at that pigmented core. And so this is really kind of nice and refreshing. You don't have to do that often. I'm just laying in my first layer of actual color. And then I'm going to come back and with my Sicilian yellow, number 220, and I'm going to go ahead and get a nice coat coat of this going. A little darker. Like I said, these are transparent glazes that are going over your undertones. And I'm just laying in a little bit of ink. Remember, once we add the water, it's going to really make these colors pop. And depending on what kind of, you know, if you're in a rush to get your piece done, what have you, you want to, you know, use a blow dryer in between layers. That'll help the drying process here. I'm going to go ahead and get my water. Remember, clean water, because we were using, you know, a darker color. Clean your water. Get some fresh water. Now we're going to start laying in our water and activating the yellow, or the yellows that we just laid in. And remember, you can always darken this. Get a little water on my brush. Okay. So we have a nice hint of color going on. I'm going to go ahead and grab, let's see, I really don't want my candy orange. Not just yet. A little bit of the golden yellow. And you can apply, wet your brush and do it this way. Wet the tip of your pencil and grab some of that color onto your brush. And you can also apply it this way. And as you can see, it's just layer upon layer. Now you may see some of my gray when you fully activate your gray or your first color, it does become permanent. I am picking up a little bit of the gray that I did not completely activate, and that's just exactly what I wanted. So I don't want you to think, oh, I'm picking up that original layer. No, I am not. It just was not fully activated, and that was my choice for my piece. As you can see, I'm laying in a little bit of this orange. Oh, that's coming out really nice. I am leaving my whites areas for the highlights. And the beautiful thing about this is you can add so many layers to this, and it just makes it richer and deeper and deeper. Beautiful effects can be created with the Derwent Inktense pencils. Okay, I'm going to lay some of this orange. Like I said, golden yellow. It's kind of on the orange spectrum there. Get that going in a little bit. Get that going around here. And you can see that's really building up really, really nice. Okay, I'm going to let this dry. And I'll be back to add another layer of color. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and drop some of this orange down here before we break off. Wow. These really are just an amazing medium to work with. The possibilities are truly endless. Okay, I'm going to go one more time around that eye. I carry my orange a little bit into that gray area here. All right. Okay, now that the layers have dried with the orange, I'm going to go ahead and add some other colors into the mix here. I have the red violet 610, a real pretty color. I've already gone ahead and tried it on my scratch piece of paper here. Really, really like that. And I'm going to go ahead and lay in a little bit of this onto some of the scales. I also want to put a hint of this into my dragon's eye. Now remember, you have an eyelid here, and so it's going to, the scales and the eyelid are going to overhang on the eyeball, so of course it's going to be a little darker there. I'm going to just go ahead and add a hint of this into here and going back down into the scales. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I've cleaned my water again. Can't stress too enough how important it is to have clean water whenever you're creating. And you can see the red violet laying very nice over that orange yellow mix. I'm going to go ahead and change my brush. Go back to that smaller round brush I have, so I can get into these scales. Now, it's not perfect by all means right now, and that's fine because we're going to fine tune this as we go ahead and go along, because there's a lot of shading and highlights that are going to fall into this piece. So like right now, we're just laying in layer after layer of color, or the transparent glaze after glaze, which is what the Derwent Inktense pencils do. Get my brush a little wet there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, and I have the Bark 2000. I'm going to go ahead and activate it this way using my bark. Kind of want to stay away from black. Usually do in all my pieces. You can create such dark, rich colors with your mediums. Why dive in and go for the black? But sometimes black is a necessity. But I kind of save that for as a final touch. I'll lay that eyeball in. Leave a little bit for a highlight. And with each layer that you add, like I said, you create this nice buildup of colors. That yellow shining through, that red violet's coming through in those key areas. Spending a little bit of time here building up the eye. Brown is another good color to use as your undertones. I see, it just depends on the piece. And with each layer of color, it's slowly coming to life. Don't forget, if you like my channel, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my videos or my product reviews. And I thank you in advance for doing so. A nice slow buildup of color there. Really nice. As you can see, I'm just putting a very light glaze of brown over that orange, strengthening and deepening it, that color. Okay, I've added some more of the red violet to the piece. And some of the key areas, even going over that yellowy orange area. Layer upon layer. I did a little bit of red violet around that center of that eye. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I want to go ahead and take that golden yellow And I want to go ahead and add a light layer on a couple of these other scales here. I'm going to go ahead and activate that with water. That way I can move on to another area. While that's drying, I'm going to grab a blue. Let's see. One of my favorite blues to this set is that iris blue. Very, very pretty color, one of my favorite colors. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of this blue. The more pressure you apply to your paper or illustration board, whatever you're using as your drawing surface or painting surface, more pressure you apply with the Derwent Inktense, the darker the color will be once you activate it. And I added that orange or that yellow, golden yellow over here just to cast a little bit of color. And you can see when I activate it by the red violet, it's going to turn it more of that violet, give it a nice rich purple, because we all know red and blue make purple. So that's really going to intensify that. And create a nice effect. I am using brown, or we already laid in that bark down here. I'm going to add a little bit of the blue. Blue and brown do make quite an interesting combination mix. And since this is a dragon, we kind of want that magical fantasy feel going on here. Okay, now that I've laid that layer in, I'm going to go ahead, get my brush, and activate that blue. Look at that. Nice, nice, nice. I say blue and that orange really work well. And blue and brown do too. So many layers already added to that piece. Now you can see the red violet. Look at that. What a beautiful shade of purple this is made by adding that blue layer over that red violet. And that's the whole key to these is just building upon layer and creating colors. Learning the color wheel if you're new into painting is, I would say, important in working with this medium. Well, any medium actually. But, you know, if you're going to make green, you know, use yellow and blue, you know. It's nice to have, you know, a green already pre-made. And they have several beauties in the Derwent Inktense range. But sometimes it's fun just to go back to, you know, the basics, your primary colors, and play and mix. And these pencils allow that. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and grab, I know, I say don't use black, but I really want to see, I think it's my Chinese ink. I'm going to go ahead and strengthen that shadow around that eye. Really want that eye to pop. I'm going to get my small brush, my small round brush. We're going to go ahead and activate that. How cool is that? You'll know when the time is right to add your darker colors. And right there, I really wanted to see how our eye was progressing and move things along. And it was the right time. You know, with these pencils, you know, you can have a very dreamy watercolor effect. And also, I like the fact that you can have a more controlled piece at the same time, which almost has an acrylic feel to it. I say that only because the Derwent Inktense gives you more of that watercolor instead of the acrylic, but since I've spent so many years doing murals and commission work for several major companies, doing acrylic work in that. This is nice to see you can paint that structured and still have, you know, a very interesting piece going on. And these are with pencils. And this is what makes it so much fun and refreshing to create with. We've applied several layers on here. And what I think I'm going to do right now is stop for tonight, let this dry really well, and resume with the piece. But I'm really liking how this is coming out already. And I hope you are too. Bye for now. And don't forget, buy a set of Derwent and subscribe to my channel.